So a lot of my friends have been sharing these different cat litter enclosures that they see on Etsy. They're pretty pricey in my opinion. I didn't really want to spend $130 on something I knew I could build myself a lot cheaper and more custom to what I want in my apartment. And I ended up in the as-is section of IKEA, and I found a whole lot of good pieces, and that they would also already mix with my IKEA pieces of furniture. And so I'm gonna put together a box that makes my litter box a lot more classy. So I've measured what I need for my posts, which will go in the corners of my box, and I've marked the cuts that I need to make, and I'm gonna start cutting. And I'm gonna need 8 of these total so that they can go at each corner and make it really strong, and the edges will also be covered because of this. So they won't be exposed and it'll actually look like IKEA furniture. So now that my pieces are all cut, I'm gonna put pilot holes, probably 3 going down, just so that the wood doesn't split when I put the screws in. The screws I got for this project are like 2-inch all-purpose screws, and I'm gonna screw the thin piece into the thick piece, because if I was to just use this screw, it's too thin and they would probably split, and that's not a good look. So after my first pilot hole, I'm gonna put a screw in so it's a little easier to do the second and third. If you're working outside in LA or anywhere warm that feels like you're in an oven, be mindful of your tools getting really, really hot, because I've seen people get burned by these kinds of things, even from it just sitting in the sun. So be mindful and make sure you're drinking water, got your sunscreen or your hat and protective eyewear on. And my design is like a hybrid of a bunch of different designs that I saw of existing cat enclosures, a couple toy chests, and a lot of plans for cabinets. But if you don't have the exact same pieces, this is like a rough idea of how you can make it solid and unique. Okay, so you can kind of see the vision here, and I'm gonna do pilot holes, 2 on each of the top of the corners so I can get a support going the other way. So you can see the frame is really starting to form and just how it will be strong. All of this will also be hidden so that my IKEA pieces look indestructible, or at least cat-proof. I've got my 4 super strong corners with their top supports. And now I get to put the stuff I got at IKEA around it so that it is both cute and super strong. So the next thing I'm gonna do here is make pilot holes for these lag bolts, and I'm going to use washers instead of screws because the wood itself is super cute but also really cheap and questionable in its integrity. So I'm gonna depend on these washers instead of on the screws themselves. And make sure if you are using like repurposed or found items that you're being mindful of what sides are finished, what sides were made for other items, just so everything can be inward facing and you don't have to take it apart again, but we've all been there as well. So just something to try and be mindful of. So I have already added lag nuts and washers to this side, which you can see here. And I'm keeping the box flush, like the sides, just to keep it really clean looking. And this is flipped upside down, so these will be my little feet for it. And I'm gonna go ahead and add 2 more bolts on each side with washers, just so that it's really tight and not depending on the screws for the pressure. So my screws are in, and now I'm just gonna tighten them. And just making sure it's, nice and tight. Make sure you mark and measure where they're gonna be just so that they look clean and on the same plane. I went with bolts obviously because, they're better than screws for what I've chosen for this project. And they keep it industrial looking and also serve the most important purpose of making it really strong. I'm gonna have to do some cutting for the end pieces. And after that, we're getting pretty close to the end here. All right, I don't have a jigsaw, but my neighbor does, so super grateful that he was able to cut this out for me. And I just used a lid of a Tupperware to carve out this little arch. Keep in mind the structure support inside that we've been working on. Those are your constraints if you don't want them to be seen. And I'm gonna add more screws on the bottom. I've already cut this down. If you are working with synthetic wood, be mindful of, the dust that comes off of it. You don't know what it is. So if you are cutting yourself, wear a mask. So because I have the support on the top, I'm going to use longer screws up there, and then I'm going to use shorter screws on the bottom because I don't have anything going across there, and I don't want the screws to come through. So I went to Home Depot and grabbed some hinges. I looked at a lot of them and I bought both frame and frameless, but I went with the hidden spring hinge after testing them out. And definitely if you're buying hinges, make sure you look closely at what the degrees are for all of them because they're all over the map. Cool. I'm gonna add a piece of trim up here next, and then probably some trim down here as well. And then clean it up and we'll see where we're at. And then I'm gonna attach that, get rid of these tags. So the last thing I wanna do is cover up this little bit. I have this piece of trim left and I've already marked it up. I'm going to add 4 screws to the back, and this is going into the door, not into the frame, because there was too much of a gap for that. And I'm going to add 4 screws, which I already planned out where they're going. Alright, so I've got to make dinner, and I think that this looks pretty good. What I wanted to show you all today was how to make a really good structure with things that people were going to throw away. All the exterior pieces are not great wood, but I was able to build a really strong frame and use whatever I wanted on the outside. So with that, I think I have one more thing to do with this project.